Yeah, g'day bush camping tools here today. Well, we're out and about with something a bit different here, and that's this. This is the HF1 Desert Warfare, the HF1T from Extrema Ratio. Okay, there it is there. It's a heavy duty folder from their heavy duty folder line. Let's have a closer look at it. So it's got the aluminium scales on here. These are made out of the same heat treatable alloy that some of my climbing gear is made out of. Not just my climbing gear, many people's climbing gear. So it's very strong stuff, and you know, but it's light, okay. And you've got a spacer in the back out of steel in here, N690 steel, which makes for the frame to be very strong. It's a liner lock, okay. So we've got a liner lock construction flipper, as you saw, and you've got part of the flipper forms the guard as well too. It's a very chunky tanto blade here, but interestingly, like some of their other heavy-duty folders, you've got this kind of safety lock in here. If I push this up here like that, can you see that? So that goes from there, and you see the word lock appear. That stops the liner being pushed across, so I cannot close the blade easily there like that. And the other thing is too, I'll just open it there for a second. If I take this pin that comes with it, this pin goes between this heavy duty frame inside the tang of the knife, and then it's locked in place by this here like that. And anyway, what happens there with that is that totally secures the blade. The blade cannot move because it is kept in place by obviously the main pivot of the blade and also this pin which is going through there. So this really it doesn't turn it into a fixed blade, but what it does do is it makes it much more reliable than just solely relying on the liner lock if you're going to do heavy work with this thing. And if you've got this in the reverse position, this is actually quite comfortable to hold in the reverse position. You're not going to slip down on the blade either because of this guard here like that. So that's a very comfortable position. Alright, so the other thing is with the Desert Camo version, you've got these marks on the blade here, and they produce that. That's from the reaction from the laser on the actual N690 cobalt stainless steel from Böhler. Okay, so that's how they get those markings on there like that. A pocket clip on here too. The pocket clip is reversible. You can undo these bolts, and it came with a wrench to take out those bolts, and you can place it on the other side here if you want there, like with that. So what else about this? Well, it's comfortable in the hand, as I said, and you can just see this here, right? It just closes over the, the hand fits on there perfectly in there like that, and it tapers towards the rear, so it's a good closure on there. And you've got a little bit of jimping which is incorporated into both the top of the knife and the scales. So what stops the knife coming in this direction? Let me just take out the pin for a minute and just show you this. I'll just close it normally. The actual pin, there's the stop pin in there. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see the stop pin in there? Well, as you can see, I've replaced the shock cord that's on there with a bit of paracord. I'll put an overhand knot in there, and the pin came with, you can see that there, the pin came with a bit of silicone rubber on it, probably just to prevent the hardened metal scratching the anodizing in the transportation. I've taken the ring that came with it and replaced it with this ring, a very strong stainless steel ring here, and I'll put the specifications up in the description. Anyway, and that just helps hold that on there. I'll just pull this out of there, put it down here so I don't lose it for a minute. But there's the pin, and I want to talk about this pin. So when we open the knife, you can take this pin and insert it in through here like that, and then turn this lever like that, and the pin can't come out now. The pin's locked in there like that. And what does this actually do? Well, this does not, the function of the pin does not turn this knife into a fixed blade, because it's not a fixed blade, it's a liner lock folder. But what it does do is, if the liner was to fail under vigorous operation of the knife, so let me just take the pin out and talk about what that means for a start. Vigorous operation. Okay, so there's just the liner in there, and it's actuated like this. Well, under, if I bolt this really hard, vibration, or the action of my hand rubbing across here like that, that could disengage the liner and the knife could close like this. That's possible. If you don't use the pin and you just use this here, this lever, this is like a Lork's lever, the liner cannot come across. I can't close the knife. However, if a really severe force was to push in this direction like that, the liner, it still might fail. But if we have engaged the liner and then I engage the pin here like this, okay, and then close that over, even if the liner was to fail, the blade cannot close because the frame would have to be destroyed, because you've got the main pivot and the pin off axis prevents the blade from closing. So, you know, this pin is off axis from the main axis. You can see that there like that, and that prevents the blade from closing in the event the liner would fail. Also, I should say that you can see in my blog at the back of this tang is a ledge milled, so it actually goes against the liner on the opposite side. So even if the stop pin, which is behind here, failed, the knife still could not close, you know, not unless the liner is completely destroyed. So this pin here is really a fail-safe mechanism. It does not turn the knife into a fixed blade, but what it does make is it makes the knife really, you know, quite reliable and strong in that position. You don't need the pin in there for this sort of thing, but I just wanted to illustrate that. This is a bit of seasoned oak I just cut down a minute ago. So how is this in the safety position? I've got this in here, that's a bit diggy in there. Normally you might have gloves on if you were in the military using this knife. But other than that, you know, for a full metal knife, I've got a good grip on this. It's not going to come off. And I can put a lot of power into this. This is very hard wood. Now, some have asked, you know, is this a military knife? Is it an outdoor knife? Well, I'm just going to say it's what you want it to be. Really, I've explained the fail-safe mechanism, the pin in there, and you can see, you know, this is not a military application per se, despite the gunshots going off in the background there. But you know, you can use it for, you know, heavy-duty tasks as a folder. I'm not worried about this thing failing on me because it's a very strongly constructed folder with all those safety aspects on there. And for normal cutting, the liner lock's going to be more than good enough. That's easy enough to do that there like that, so there you go. Just to illustrate the tip strength on this thing, you know. Let me just put the pin into this actually, because this is a prime thing to put the pin into. That's what I would not do with a normal folder. And how is that? There's no movement at all in this whatsoever. And ooh, that's deadly sharp, of course. This is some pretty hard wood there. And that is actually, that was not the knife, by the way, that was the wood. That's fat wood in there, very sturdy. Okay, so that's what you can do with such a tanto tip like this. Is a pretty heavy duty folding knife. Yep, okay. Let's move on. Okay, so there you go, Extrema Ratio's HF1T, the tanto, the T just stands for the tanto tip. I think it's a pretty heavy-duty folder, as they say, and it has various different fail-safe mechanisms in there. So ordinary liner lock, then it's got the Laux type lock on there, and then it's got the ridge on the back of the tang to prevent if the stop pin up here was to fail, but it's a very thick stop pin in this 6082 heat treatable alloy. Then on top of all of that, if you put in the pin in here, well, it's just impossible for this thing to close unless you destroy the either back of the tang or the handle of the knife. But as I said before, it does not turn it into a fixed blade. It's not a fixed blade, it's a folder, but it's a folder with redundancy built into it. Hence, I would suggest, many military devices have, redundancy built in, so if something fails, something else can back it up. So yeah, there you go. Extrema Ratio HF1T. Bush Camping Tools here. Thanks for watching.